So that is a 5-cent piece. It's a 2011 5-cent piece, probably one of the last that'll ever be minted. And the story of the death of the 5-cent piece is a little bit like the story of the South African economy. South African economy is not dying, incidentally, but it is one where inflation has taken hold. It is one where 5 cents no longer really is worth what it used to be. So we throw away the 5-cent pieces and we focus on the big numbers. I wonder whether this won't be South Africa's first ever trillion rand budget. It's becoming increasingly expensive to run South Africa. We saw the President's State of the Nation speech just a couple of weeks ago, in which he announced a 300 billion rand program for Transnet, for example. That money's got to come from somewhere. So what does Pravin Gordhan have to do in the budget? Well, he's basically got to convince you and I that we are getting more bang for our buck, that we're getting a little bit of what they call bracket creep, so a little bit more money in your pay packet at the end of next month. That'll be welcome. But all that does really is make up for inflation, the effects of inflation, and we've got very high inflation rates in South Africa. So expect some kind of a tax cut, and he will then say, newspaper headlines the next day will be, Gordhan gives back 8 billion to taxpayers or 12 billion to taxpayers, and there'll be cheers all round. Ultimately, though, that's not the good news bit. The good news bit, if Pravin Gordhan gets his sums right, will be how we go about building South Africa for the next 10 years. Part of that is through building infrastructure. Part of that is through providing for the many millions of South Africans who have no source of income. The South African economy is not creating jobs. So Pravin Gordhan is going to say, well, look, there are 15 million people in South Africa who are dependent on some kind of state grant. Unfortunately, that falls on you, falls on me, and every other honest taxpayer in the country to fund those 15 million people who are dependent on the state. Now, the pool of money that the state has got at its disposal seems to be getting smaller and smaller. Corporate profits are beginning to recover from the 2008 financial crisis, so there'll be an uplift there. Government can't go and raise VAT. I don't see that happening. VAT is already controversial in trade union circles. Also, might it raise taxes? Already the South African tax rate is among one of the higher tax rates in the world, considering also that you end up having to pay for private school fees and private security and for private medical aid and all of that sort of stuff to keep your families going. So I don't think tax rates necessarily are going to go up. What is going to happen is Pravin Gordhan is going to have to say, we're going to borrow more money. This is the scary bit. He's going to tell us he's being responsible. He's going to tell us he has got a crystal ball that can tell us within the next 5 years that economic growth in South Africa will recover because of government infrastructure spend, and we will be able to pay back that debt. But I think the big story of Budget 2012 is going to be more borrowing, possibly South Africa's first ever trillion rand budget. A little bit of good news, well, anyway, disguised as good news for you and me in terms of apparent tax breaks, but ultimately, nothing ever goes down in a budget that doesn't leave you and I just a little bit worse off. Beer prices, they'll go up. Wine, it'll go up. Whiskey, it'll go up. Virtually every single sin tax, including if you like to have a cigarette, if you're one of the few remaining smokers in the country, you're going to be paying more for that as well. So budget pretty much like last year, stretched, difficult, challenging, but certainly an environment in which the South African government is still being very well managed at the centre. The Treasury is very well managed at the centre, and it's about making the few rand that are available go that little bit further. Hopefully he tells us how he's going to pay for Limpopo and other provinces as well that have not been managing their books properly.